What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, your host, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take. Back again live from One Buffalo, New York. Oh boy, I wanted to give myself the chance to really stew, really give this some time to process in my mind before I went on the air like a crazed maniac and explained my thoughts on the main event that was Tyron Woodley putting his belt on the line against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. The rematch from UFC 205, the fight that was originally at Madison Square Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Madison Square Garden Arena in New York City, And that was a spectacular fight on a card that is considered to be the greatest fight card in UFC history. It was promoted as the greatest card in combat sports history. Tyron Woodley and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson went toe-to-toe for 5 rounds to a draw. Majority draw, where Tyron Woodley, the champion, got to keep his belt and basically defended his belt off a draw. He was not happy with that. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson wasn't happy with that. The UFC wasn't happy with that. They needed to do it again, and they did. UFC 209, a few weeks back, did not live up to the billing. That's safe to say. The event was, for the lack of a better word, it was a disaster. 24 hours before the event, actually the day of the fight, 24 hours before the event, I should say, Khabib Nurmagomedov had, according to Luke Rockhold, the former UFC, former Strikeforce champion Luke Rockhold, said that Khabib's liver was shutting down due to the harsh weight cut that he had to undergo getting down to 155. The first thing I thought of when I had heard the news that Khabib Nurmagomedov missed weight and could not fight Tony Ferguson for the interim lightweight title was the fact that the UFC runs this show to promote the event that the fans can access. That show is called UFC Embedded. And on UFC Embedded, Khabib Nurmagomedov was out with his buddies, out with his trainers, out at a nice fancy restaurant. The door was held open for him. He got the best seat in the house. Everybody was there to support him. Life was good. He ordered tiramisu to eat less than a week before the fight. The dessert, tiramisu, which is 1,500 calories per serving. So this is not something that a fighter, a pro mixed martial artist fighter, should be eating before a fight. And regardless as whether he thought he could cut the weight, the fact that his body had practically poison in it from a strict weight cut, eating clean for that long amount of time, and then eating something so sugar-rich like tiramisu, that could have caused his body, just one of the reasons why, I should say, that could have been one of the reasons why his body was shutting down. I have a hard time having sympathy for a pro mixed martial artist that gets paid to fight handsomely, fairly well, was set to get paid pretty well for this fight handsomely, via interim title fight, because of the fact that it's an interim title fight, and he throws it away based on weight. Your job as a fighter is to do 2 things: train to be prepared and cut weight. That's it. And hopefully your training leads you to win your fight. Everything else is what is referred to as fate after that. So if you miss weight, how can anybody take you seriously as a professional? I don't know how that's possible. I also don't know how it's possible that Khabib Nurmagomedov could get yet another shot at Tony Ferguson in a fight that would dictate who wins the interim title, the fighter that will fight the biggest name in the sport, Conor McGregor, for the UFC lightweight belt. Why does Khabib deserve that chance? I don't care if he's 50-0. He missed weight. He's hurt constantly. And he blew his opportunity on a big stage. The biggest stage of them all. A co-main event, basically, for a fight that he hyped himself as a main event fight. The people's main event. And within 24 hours, he was out of that fight. Within 24 hours of the fight. Now, the UFC scrambled. They tried to put Tony Ferguson together. They tried to do what they could to put Tony and Michael Johnson and Tony and Eddie Alvarez. They tried, as of this week, to put Tony and Eddie Alvarez in Buffalo, which I think there needs to be one more big fight on that card. There's not enough there. Excuse me. And the fact is, Tony shouldn't have to sign to fight Khabib again. Tony should never sign to fight Khabib again. That's the last guy I would sign to fight ever again, and it has nothing to do with his athletic ability. It has everything to do with his lack of ability to make weight. I'm not going to train 6 to 8 weeks for a guy that we don't know if he can make it through camp without getting hurt. We don't know if he can make it. If he does make it through camp, if he does make it through his fight camp, can he even make the weight? The answer is no. Is he too big? Is he too small to fight at welterweight? Yes. That suggestion is mind-blowing. People are suggesting that Khabib should fight at welterweight. He can't. He's too small. That's why he's fighting at lightweight. He can't fight at welterweight. He's way too small. That's why there's weight classes. There's weight classes for a reason. Not everybody gets the opportunities to fight in other weight classes like Conor McGregor, like GSP, like Anderson Silva. Those were opportunities. Khabib blew his biggest opportunity of his career. Why give him another opportunity to do something for himself? Khabib needs to be tucked away. He needs to figure out his medical situation. And then the UFC should go from there before putting him in a big fight on a big event where fans are excited to see him fight. I can't name one fan that wasn't excited to see this fight. I don't know why they would put Khabib versus Tony again. I don't know why they would even target that. I also don't know how, in my mind, or anyone else's mind, let alone 3 pro MMA judges' minds, that Tyron Woodley won that fight. I had it 3-2, and that is a stretch. I had it 4-1. The one round I gave Tyron Woodley, being that I scored it by round, and I'll get to that later, being that I scored it by round, and it being a 5-round fight where both men were still standing after the 25 minutes, I gave Tyron 1 round. He got a takedown. He stayed on top. He landed decent punches. And by the end of the round, Wonderboy got back to his feet. I'll give Tyron that round. The round in which Stephen Thompson was almost finished, the 5th and final round, I can't give Woodley that round because it was in the last 20 seconds of the round. Before that, the 4 minutes and 40 seconds of that round, Woodley was backing up with his back to the cage as he was throughout the majority of the fight, the entirety of the fight. Thompson pushed the pace. Thompson landed combinations rather than just one punch at a time. And Thompson pretty much neutralized Tyron Woodley's power and his wrestling. The one takedown Tyron got, he was able to keep him down for a little while. Thompson was able to defend, get back to his feet, and the round continued. These judges are scoring this fight by round, not by knockdown. So you're telling me if someone knocks a guy down with 5 seconds in the round, then he won the round? If the guy was fine and he was never knocked out and the fight continued and he was winning the round, the 4 minutes and 55 seconds before that, he won the round. You're scoring it based on time, the amount of time. Who won the 5 minutes? Who won the majority of the 5 minutes? That's how you score a round. Not who did the last thing in the round. Who made the last impact in the round. That's not how rounds should be scored. I've said this for years. I'm going to say it again because this is the first time I've said it on the air. The 10-point scoring system in MMA is one of the most idiotic scoring systems I have ever seen. You can't score a mixed martial arts fight the same way you score a boxing fight. There's way too many intangibles in mixed martial arts, hence why it's called mixed martial arts, for anyone to score the fight in a different way. This is mixed martial arts. There's kicking, there's punching, there's wrestling, there's jiu-jitsu. There's so many aspects to this game that this sport cannot be scored by knockdown, by most landed punches. It has to be scored by position and transition and clinch and submission attempts, takedowns, everything. Everything that this sport is all about needs to be brought to attention in the scoring system. This is not a sport that should be scored like the one-dimensional sport that is boxing, where the hands are the only thing that matters. I am shocked that Tyron Woodley was given the decision for that fight. Shocked. To this very minute. He had a takedown and a knockdown. That was it. Thompson might not have been in any position to finish the fight, but if you're scoring the entirety of a fight, he neutralized Tyron Woodley for the better part of the 25 minutes in which Tyron and Wonderboy fought. They got to do it again. They're not going to do it again right away because the fight was very lackluster. The styles of Woodley and Thompson canceled each other out completely. The karate distance fighter that Thompson is prohibited Woodley from wanting to rush in. And when Woodley did rush in, Thompson got out. He was out of the way. So it was a completely contrast in styles. That's what made the first fight so exciting. This is what made the second fight a dud. Both fighters, it was painfully obvious that both fighters sat with their coaches, watched hours upon hours of tape of each other, and brought that into the cage with them. They were a little bit gun shy. I don't want to say they were playing chicken or anything like that. They were feeling each other out. Neither one wanted to make a mistake because they knew if they did, it could very well be the end of the fight. Thompson did make a mistake in the waning minutes of the fifth round. It cost him the fight, unfortunately. It should not have cost him the fight, but it did. And I am really afraid. I'm really afraid of the future of the sport if the judging continues to be based on highest impact moments rather than who wins the actual entirety of the 5-minute round, who wins more of the 5 minutes. And it's very tough. It's extremely hard to score a round in the sport of mixed martial arts. When I have my scorecard, when I'm watching it, whether I'm at the bar, at home, in my mind, when I'm scoring the fight, it's very hard because once the round's over, it's over. You can't go back and watch it before you watch the next round. I get that. But this is a real sport, and this sport needs to be taken seriously. If it wants to be taken seriously, fighters need to win the fights in which they control the fight and bring their game plan into the octagon successfully. If the two men are standing there and neither one has been knocked out or submitted, whoever implemented their game plan the best should win the fight. And Tyron Woodley did not do that. Not in my opinion. He did block me off of Twitter after I had tweeted with Dan Hardy and said, hey, I think Wonderboy won. I agree with you. I did not know Tyron and Dan Hardy had a beef, and I didn't know Tyron had a beef with anyone that talked to Dan Hardy, including myself. Tyron did unblock me. I did message him, and I did say, my apologies if I offended you. And he sent TY, so that means thank you. So that is the aftermath of UFC 209. Woodley remains the champion. Very, very interesting.